Here we go. Hopefully it's better than the last.
Am I calling it in the air again?
Yes, you are.
Tails.
You didn't.
I called it kind of.
It's heads.
Oh, it's heads
no.
again. This is rigged. You didn't even show me the result there.
That's tough for you.
I think this is rigged.
You want me to go again?
No.
Okay.
You can go ahead. You have your first pick of bullpen arm once again, and I think this competition is rigged, but that's okay.
I really like both my guys. That's my issue here, so I kind of wanted to go second here. I could defer, but I won't. So we're going to go with Jordan Hicks.
All right.
Who was a free agent for the first time.
Yep.
Played with both the Cardinals and then was traded at the deadline to Toronto last year. He's a very, very good arm. That's what we know about this guy is he throws like 300 miles per hour.
He does. Since high school, he has thrown over 100 miles an hour.
And at times, the ball moves in ways you didn't think it could when it comes out of his hand. He had some down years in St. Louis, so I think some people started to question whether or not he could continue to have that potential, which was that he'd be a big-time closer.
Yeah.
But last year in Toronto at 2.63 ERA after being dealt, he was really, really good. And this is a guy who I think you could get for a relatively cheap contract over a couple of years. He's still relatively young. And again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but who's got the best pitching development program and would love to sink their teeth into a guy like this is the Baltimore Orioles. So I love Jordan Hicks here.
Well, Matt, I'm going to be honest with you. Jordan Hicks, coming into the day, was my number one seed.
Really?
In bullpen arm. I think it makes all the sense in the world. As you mentioned, throws over 100 miles an hour on his sinker. You can't elevate on the guy. He doesn't give up home runs. He's got a really, really good ground ball rate at about 58%, just half a home run per 9 innings pitched. The Orioles have a great defense, and going to get a bullpen arm that puts the ball on the ground at a really, really consistent rate is great. And as you mentioned, he just turned 27. I think there are a lot of things that you could potentially unlock with Jordan Hicks. He's young. He's got great arm talent. He's got a good track record. The sky is really the limit for him. And being able to pair him, Jordan Hicks could command a multi-year deal in free agency. I think more than likely he probably will. And so you're not just looking at the need for 2024 there. You'd be looking at potentially pairing him at the back end of your bullpen with Felix Bautista, two guys who can pump 102 when they need to. You could get to the 8th and 9th inning and the game would be over.
You make a three-headed monster out of Cano, Hicks, and Bautista. Like you said, you get late enough into the game, you don't have a chance.
Yeah, I think that's a really great choice and one that makes a lot of sense and is hard to argue against. But as I mentioned, Jordan Hicks was my number one seed maybe coming into last evening. And I was like, Jordan Hicks makes all the sense in the world. Then I did some digging.
Oh, no.
And I found my Jock Peterson from a year ago. If you are a consistent listener of the show, you will remember that Paul Mancano and I had our free agency bracket last year, and I went to war for Jock Peterson. I said, this is the guy that the Orioles should sign. He makes all the sense in the world. He fills the exact role that the Orioles need. And then he ended up, I think, accepting his qualifying offer and staying in San Francisco, and it didn't matter. But the premise stayed that I had a guy, and I stuck to it. And last night, Bones, I had an epiphany. It just washed over me that I knew who my guy was for this year. And it's Robert Stevenson.
Yeah, I knew it was. Oh, that's great. That's great.
And it is Robert Stevenson. And if you're listening
awesome.
along, you might be saying, huh? Who is Robert Stevenson? Well, dear listener, I will tell you who Robert Stevenson is. He had a 4.90 career ERA from 2016 to 2022. And I'm sure you're saying, Brendan, that's not very good.
Brendan, that's not very good.
It's not very good. Starts the 2023 season with the Pittsburgh Pirates and tosses a 5.14 ERA, walking over 5 batters per 9 innings. And I'm sure you're saying, well, Brendan, that's still not very good. Where's the pitch here? Why is this your guy? Robert Stevenson got traded to the Tampa Bay Rays. And the craziest thing happened. The Rays looked at Robert Stevenson and said, hey, that slider that you throw all the time, get rid of that thing. It's not any good. How about you start throwing a cutter? And boy, did he start throwing a cutter. He started throwing his cutter about 75% of the time. Hitters made contact on that pitch. Not a hit, just made contact on that pitch 41% of the time. In 42 games with Tampa Bay, at the back half of the 2023 season, he had an ERA of 2.35 with over 14 strikeouts per 9 innings and a whip just over .6. His walk numbers went down from walking 5 batters per 9 at the beginning of the season to about 2 batters per 9 innings. His fastball, which is the complement to his cutter, sits about 97. He was untouchable for 4 months of the year. And I understand that a 40-game sample size to sign somebody to a potential multi-year deal that I think Robert Stevenson will probably get seems like a bit of an overreaction. And I think in general, you would think of the sample size as, well, yeah, but he was bad since 2016. His ERA wasn't very good. Why would you go based off of just 40 games at the end of last season? And normally I wouldn't if he didn't make a fundamental change to how he pitches. Completely abandoned the slider, which was a fine pitch, and started throwing the cutter, which was an unbelievable pitch. He induced a swinging strike on almost 30% of his pitches in Tampa Bay. He's entering his age 31 season, and this is a completely different guy than he was for the first 6 years of his career. And I think he makes all the sense in the world, because if the Orioles can do the same thing that the Rays did, we know the Orioles and Rays are both kind of notorious at this point for just taking a pitcher that you don't think much of and turning him into somebody fantastic. We see the Rays do it year in and year out. We see the Orioles do the same exact thing. The Rays seem to have unlocked the blueprint with Robert Stevenson, because you could not touch him for 4 months, and he was one of the best bullpen arms in baseball, like rivaled Felix Bautista numbers for the back half of the year. And so the Rays figured it out, and I think the Orioles can keep it going. And Robert Stevenson could be one of the most dominant bullpen arms in baseball next year.
Wow.
That's my pitch.
That was almost presidential.
Yeah.
That was darn good.
I might have your vote on Twitter at this point.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about his path, the Pirates aren't known as a team that develops pitchers the best way possible, and the Rays are. So for him to go from the Pirates to the Rays, kind of like Tyler Glasnow did, that was always going to be a benefit to him. And I love that nugget about the slider to the cutter. That's awesome. That's the kind of stuff I love. So I appreciate you going and getting that for us.